Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a couple of Imperial IPAs. Though both of these call themselves double IPAs, they are interchangeable. So it really doesn't matter your preference. At day's end, you're still drinking doubly delicious IPA here. So we're going to be starting with Drekker Brewing Company. We've reviewed quite a few different beers by Drekker of various styles. This one's called Doomsday Device. It clocks in at 8.3%. And they are based in Fargo, North Dakota. For number two, this is first beer by a brewer for me. So always exciting to try a beer by a brewer I've never tried before. This brewer is Common Roots Brewing Company. This one's called Double Fortune. It is a double dry hopped Imperial IPA, clocks in at 8% ABV, and they are based in Clifton Park, New York. So we've got two IPAs very close in the ABV range. And I'm expecting it's going to be kind of a pretty close matchup here. I think they're going to pair well in this review, right in the same ballpark. And we'll get to the list of ingredients, but it seems there's a lot of common ground here. So without further ado, we're going to get jumping right in with Drekker Brewing Company's Doomsday Device that clocks in at 8.3% ABV. Okay, so jumping into the first beer of today's Imperial IPA review, we have got Drekker Brewing Company's Doomsday Device. 8.3% ABV on this one. Drekker Brewing Company is based in Fargo, North Dakota. So first things first, label art. They always have very interesting label art. This is no exception. It looks really gnarly. It's also very bright, kind of fluorescent coloring. Looks like a giant robot with like a Doomsday button in its mouth. That's the best way I can describe it. And they do tell you who does their artwork on the can, though it's written in a font that I can't make out. Well, it's cursive, but it's written so interestingly, it's really hard to make out what letters it could be. Nonetheless, this is brewed with just a single hop, this one being Mosaic. So I'm expecting good things. And true to form, Drekker does tell you their full bill. So malts, they're using Golden Promise, oats, and Carboform, as well as Carafoam, as well as Spelt. Hops, we already talked about Mosaic, and yeast, they're using their house IPA yeast. So, you know, it's not giving away trade secrets. They're not telling you ratios, temperature control, anything like that. But I do like when a brewer tells you, hey, here's exactly what I put in my beer. So I wish more brewers did that. I really appreciate that about Drekker. But enough about that. Let's get this cracked and poured right into the glass, gently. All right. Pouring it out, I can smell it quite clearly, very pungent, and a beautiful golden color as I'm pouring it here. And I've got a sneaky suspicion this one's going to form a pretty good head. I need to back off. Yep, let's just back that off. Didn't quite get the whole can in there, but that's all right. Visually, absolutely beautiful. This is the exact shade I think in my head when I think of an IPA. It's a deep, true golden yellow. Yes, indeed, it did form a nice head. It looks very tight, very creamy. The effervescence that's coming up, little mix of medium and small, so we'll see how long that head holds. But let's get right up over it for a proper sniff. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it just smells fantastic. There's nothing about that that's not appealing. It smells absolutely fresh. And it smells exactly like you would expect a beer that was brewed with Mosaic hops to smell. It's got a lot of underlying fruit aroma, a little bit of a blueberry aroma to it, which is kind of a hallmark of Mosaic hops. It's very unique. It's one reason people like to dry hop with it a lot, even if you're not putting it into the boil. You know, it adds this really nice aroma that really is not replicable by any other hop variety, at least that I know of to date. Yeah, a little bit of a undercurrent of grass and a little bit of a kind of a piney twinge as well. So it smells very nice, exactly as I expected for the hop variety chosen. Let's jump right in. Okay, so first thing first. The mouthfeel is incredibly lush and thick and resistant, far more than I would ever have imagined for an 8.3% IPA. The body is a true medium heavy. So the body's right where I would expect it to be. The mouthfeel is far more lush. I don't want to say that it doesn't really match the body, but it gives this extra textural depth to the beer that's fantastic. In terms of Mosaic hop being the choice and how does that play out in what you get in this beer. Mosaic hops are another hop strain that's very high in alpha acid content. So if you extract enough of the alphas into the boil, there's a good chance you're going to get a nice, really big bitter kick. They didn't go for that in here. It tastes more like they probably dry hopped more for aroma, added aroma elements, and just put enough hops in here for it to be kind of a base IPA at its heart, but without being overtly and pungently bitter. Looks like they're going for the hop subtlety pairing with their malt bill, and overall together, it's quite nice. Is it as bitter forward and hoppy as I personally like? No. But does it taste good? Absolutely it does. And another thing worth noting in this one, Mosaic is a hop that if you get too much of it in a beer, which maybe that's why they didn't go as heavy, it can put off some rather funky flavors, some very funky flavors. Not like Brettanomyces funk, but there's like a, yeah, that's funky. This one doesn't taste funky at all. It just tastes very fresh, like fresh ripe fruit, and there is a little subtle bit of a piney twinge in the back. That's commonplace with Mosaic, but more I'm getting outside of just the base hop elements, I'm really getting a good taste of this underlying malt bill, and it is delicious. It tastes very grainy. There is this subtle kind of grass-like element to it, and it's quite nice. And I don't know if that's from the caraform or if that's from the spelt that they put in there. I bake a lot at home. I use spelt flour a lot. That's a whole grain. And it really just tastes nice. So it's got this nice grainy back with this really bright, ripe, fresh, almost bordering on floral quality about it that's really, really delicious. I'm going to jump in for finish and see if I missed anything else important, but overall, a nice beer. Yeah, it just tastes so fresh, so bright and fresh. And that lasts pretty good bit for the first 3, 4, 5 seconds. Then it slowly starts to back down that hop characteristic intensity, and then the malt characteristic starts to come through, and it really is delicious. Once that happens, they start to blend, and actually a funny thing happens. That's where the apex of kind of the bitter sensation is, because it's so kind of fruity and floral on the front. It's once that backs down and the natural malts come through, that's when you really get the little bit of the sensation of bitters. It's not intense at all, but it is there. And I just like the fact that I can clearly taste all of the hop element and the grain element independently. It is just beautifully balanced. If you're a big hop head and you crave the bitters, you know, I'm not saying this one will let you down or you'll be disappointed, because it's a delicious beer, but this is not pungently bitter. This would be a good one that's very approachable for somebody that's kind of on the fence on IPAs, doesn't really like super bitter beers. This is one I would recommend. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, come up with my scores. When we come back, we will get to the second beer of today's review. That is Common Roots Brewing Company's Double Fortune, and that one clocks in at 8% ABV. Okay, now jumping into the second beer of today's Imperial IPA review, we have got Common Roots Brewing Company's Double Fortune. This is the first beer I've ever had by this brewer, so that's always exciting for me. This specific one was double dry hopped. They used Galaxy and Eldorado hops in this. Clocks in at 8% ABV. Common Roots is based in Clifton Park, New York. So in terms of label art, this one is just a very classic, clean design. Nice kind of slate gray with a few little ribbons of color coming around it. Looks nice, very clean, nothing else to talk about there. So let's just get this cracked and get into the beer itself gently. All right. Poured right in the old glass. All right, this one is pouring, again, just another classic IPA yellow here. A nice, true, deep golden yellow, which is what I expect and rather what I like to see. Okay. Yeah, visually, that is a deep golden yellow. It's very, very bright. I can tell you it's got a very pronounced aroma. It smells really good. I could smell it at a great distance. Carbonation doesn't seem to be super active after the fact, but mostly small tight bubbles that I see on the side formed a really nice head here yet again. Let's give it a proper sniff. Yeah, that smells great. Okay, so in this one, I'm getting tons and tons of tropical fruit, mainly as the dominant aroma that's coming through. Smells strongly of kind of a combination of passion fruit and pineapple, maybe a little bit of an orange juice kind of side to it as well. I'm not really picking up any earthy vibes. I'm not really picking up any pine or resinous vibes. It's all very dominant with a little bit of citrus and a lot of tropical fruit. It's very pungent. Oh, it just smells absolutely delicious. I can't wait to jump in. Even though that head's pretty thick, it's holding true. I'm just going to make a mess of my beard. Let's go for it. Oh, man. Yeah, that's a really good beer. Wow. Okay. It's not often that I have an Imperial IPA that I think, man, I'm really glad I got that Imperial and just instead of just a standard IPA. This is one of those that does what I wish the majority, if not all, would do. It is not shy with the hops. Granted, Eldorado and Galaxy are two well-known high alpha acid content hops. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to extract them into the boil to get the bitter content up. I am pleasantly surprised to report that there is a very nice kick of hoppy, bittery goodness that comes in this, as well as the standard kind of additional flavor profiles that get extracted into the beer in an IPA. But this one, if you're a hophead, love the bitters, but don't normally go for the higher ABV, and doubles, triples, etc. This is one you might want to take a look at. So first thing first, absolutely delicious. And sure, the flavor profile based on these hops, there are elements of what you get in the aroma that come through in the flavor profile, but on the actual hop bittering side and other flavor elements that come through, there are some additional treats for you. So while it doesn't smell earthy at all, it doesn't smell any pine or resinous at all. Those two flavors do make themselves known in the actual flavor of the beer. So there is this nice kind of earthy bitterness to it and a little bit of that resinous quality. It's not super pungent on the resinous side, but there is just a little twinge of resinous, tarry, pine-like bitters to it as well. Definitely, you do get that nice bright kind of fruity flavor. It doesn't necessarily taste per se like pineapple or passion fruit as it smells, but you do get kind of a citrusy undertone. And it did smell like a bit of orange juice, and in fact it does kind of taste a bit like orange juice mixed with these other flavors. My first sip impression, very, very good, excellent hop choice, and pleased to report that they did extract a good bit of alphas in there for a nice bitter back to it. I'm going to jump back in for body and mouthfeel, think of the flavor development and the finish. There was a lot to take in on first sip. This is a complex one. This is a pretty stinking heavy body. It's bordering on heavy, medium heavy. It's got real presence on the palate. Texturally, if it's sitting flat in the mouth, it feels more or less like an IPA should, what you would expect. But once you start to agitate around the palate, you see that it's not just the body that's got a lot of breadth. The mouthfeel has a ton of resistance. It is bordering on viscous. Very, very thick. It's very, very thick. It's got a ton of presence. When you agitate around the palate, it gets very silky, very creamy. And just kind of increases that perception of thickness. In terms of the finish, the flavor development really begins very peak out of the start. You get kind of the fruity accents and the citrusy accents, then a big rush of earthy with a little twinge of resin and pine underneath, and it intensifies for about a good 5 seconds, holds there for a few seconds, and starts its slow, steady descent. Now, unlike your average Imperial, this does have a healthy dose of hop bittering elements to it, and that always is going to help extend the length of the finish on each sip of any IPA. Nary really any beer, but IPAs in particular, and this one does have quite a longer finish than average. Is it the absolute zenith of the length that I've had? Certainly not, but it is indeed well above average. You're really left with this haunting, lingering, earthy bitter with just a twinge of pine, and even still just a little suggestion of that kind of orange juice citrusy side that kind of hangs out on the back. In terms of balance, this is exactly what I look for and want in an IPA. Let the hop be the star of the beer, let the hop tell the story. And I don't just mean all of these like we keep getting in IPAs these days. They're all over the place. You almost throw a rock at an IPA on a shelf in your local beer store, and you're going to hit an IPA that's loaded with big, bursty fruit, juicy, kind of flavors, which is great. That's one interesting element of hops that are brought to the table. But I am, seems with every passing day, sorely missing more and more that bittering element, and this one is in here. So the balance between getting all of the interesting facets of the flavors and aromas that are brought to the table, as well as the bitters, that to me, that's just a beautifully balanced IPA. That's what I crave. And, really the hop is the star of the show. In terms of the malt bill, nothing too fancy here. It's a classic IPA malt bill underneath. Kind of stays out of the way, let the hops do their thing. And honestly, I think it's the better for it. I really enjoy this one. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, come up my scores. When we come back, we will get both beers ranked from top to bottom. Okay, now that we've gotten to enjoy both beers, we're going to get them ranked. Though before I start, I should state that it has been several weeks since I actually tasted these beers the first time. I got slammed at work. I've been working solo since March, and life happens. So honestly, I don't remember these as clearly as I wish I did. So I'm going to be lacking a little bit of insight that I normally provide at the ranking stage. But nonetheless, we're going to go through them anyway. Starting with Drekker Brewing Company's Doomsday device. This was a double IPA, 8.3% ABV, brewed with Mosaic hops. They're based in Fargo, North Dakota. Starting with the aroma, I remember the aroma on this one was pungent, and indeed the score reflects that. It's a 10 out of 10. For the taste, I really don't remember that much about it. I feel like I probably was just craving more hops based on where I ranked it, but it does rank above average at a 7. For the body, I do distinctly remember this was a very robust body. Double IPA, it could still be all over the board. 8.3%, that's not a low ABV, but it doesn't always translate to body. This was quite thick, quite lush, had a big presence. It gets a 9 out of 10. Mouthfeel on this one was equally as impressive. I do remember that about this. The body and the mouthfeel I remember. Very heavy, very lush, very viscous. The mouthfeel gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the finish, honestly, I don't remember that much about the finish, but it just got an average rating. It gets a 5 out of 10. For the head and retention, I don't remember this, but it got a 9. So it probably did a well above average job there and stuck around most of the time I was sipping on the beer. For the appearance, give it a perfect 10 out of 10. That means we're looking at a classic color spectrum here for an IPA. Balance. Based on some of the other rankings, I kind of sort of remember bits and pieces. I give it above average here, 7 out of 10. So really, I think it probably still comes back to craving more hops. I'll be able to confirm that when I get into editing this video, but I hope I'm not too far off the mark. Balance, 7 out of 10. Feeling the intangible. This is another category. I just gave it average. It gets a 5 out of 10. As an example of the style, this one's above average. It gets a 7 out of 10, which brings the total score on Drekker Brewing Company's Doomsday device to a 79 out of 100. So this is a well above average double IPA. I don't often go for double IPAs personally for my own drinking pleasure, but this one above average, which means it had enough hop kick in there that I didn't feel let down, but I was still craving more, as I always do. Guilty of being a hophead here. Moving on to number 2. I do actually remember this one far better. This one stuck with me. This is Common Roots Brewing Company's Double Fortune. Again, a double IPA. This one was double dry hopped with Galaxy and Eldorado hops. 8% ABV on here. They're based in Clifton Park, New York. Aroma on this one, massive aroma. I remember being blown away and thinking, wow, that smells quite earthy, a little bit of piney. A lot of different aromas came through. It got a perfect 10 out of 10. For the taste, I do remember this clearly. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10, and I'll tell you, it was one of those rare double IPAs where just the hop pungency blew me away, and I was so happy. It does get that 10 out of 10. For the body on this one was huge. Gets a perfect 10 out of 10. Mouthfeel, same story. Tons of resistance. Just paired perfectly with the body. It gets a 10 out of 10. The finish, this is a category I don't remember that well, but it did score well above average. It gets an 8 out of 10, so I'm guessing those hop pungencies really helped the bitters linger. Head and retention, this one did even better than the first. It does get a perfect 10 out of 10. For the appearance, we're looking at another classic IPA color range. It gets a 10 out of 10. Balance gets a 10 out of 10. Really, it seemed this beer didn't have too much that I could fault it. Yeah, balance 10 out of 10. That's always a good sign. Feeling in the intangibles, subjectively, I loved it. Gets a 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style, you could probably guess it's a 10 out of 10. It nearly swept all categories here. And it's rare that that happens for me with a double IPA, but there are still some out there for fellow hopheads that you can find if you look hard enough. Total score on Common Roots Brewing Company's Double Fortune is a 98 out of 100. That's near double IPA perfection. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live to YouTube, you just click the notification bell button. It is right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.